here to regulate the operation. When you want to light and power your internet and phone, the OUR is here to get you to know your rights.
The OUR is here to regulate on the public utilities operate. Water, light, phone, and internet. The OUR keep them in check.
Contact us at 1-888-CALL-OUR, the Office of Utilities Regulation. OUR, regulating utilities for the benefit of all.
Hello and welcome to another webinar hosted by the Office of Utilities Regulation in Kingston, Jamaica. Whether you are joining us via our Facebook page, our YouTube page, whether you are on your computers at home or in the office, on your mobile phone, we are so happy to have you. My name is Elizabeth Bennett Marsh and I'm the Public Education Specialist at the Office of Utilities Regulation. The topic for today's webinar is Appeal, how OUR helps resolve utility customers' issues. Most of you watching would be aware of the role of the OUR, which is to regulate the utility services in Jamaica. A significant part of our role is to handle customer appeals through our consumer and public affairs department. But what exactly do we do on behalf of customers? Are you sufficiently aware of the appeals service offered by the Office of Utilities Regulation? What kind of complaints can you take to us? And what is our level of success in handling customer issues? To answer those and other questions, we have pulled a panel of ladies straight from our Consumer and Public Affairs Department at the OUR. To my immediate right is our Director of Consumer and Public Affairs at the OUR, Yvonne Nicholson. Welcome, Yvonne.
Thank you.
Beside Yvonne, we have Naomi Watkins, who is the Coordinator for the Consumer Affairs Unit in that department. Welcome, Naomi. And beside Naomi, we have Colette Good, Specialist for Consumer Affairs Policy at the OUR. Welcome. So the format of today's webinar is very simple. Each panelist will make a short presentation, followed by a discussion. We want to hear from you. So even while we're having the discussion, in fact, from now, you can start sending in your comments and your questions. If it is that you're on our Facebook page, you can submit your questions there. If it is that you're watching us on our YouTube page, you can also submit your questions there. And if you're on your mobile and you just want to send us a WhatsApp or a straight SMS text message, please do so. 876-316-2647. I now invite Yvonne Nicholson to make the first presentation addressing the critical question: do customers know about the appeals process? Yvonne.
Thank you. It's definitely a pleasure being here with my colleagues, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this information with you, because I know that not many persons know what we do in the Consumer and Public Affairs Department. So to begin, the department covers three responsibilities, major responsibilities. The first of which is public affairs, which covers interfacing with the public and the media; consumer affairs, which covers complaints handling and appeals; and of course our information center, ORIC, which is open to the public. If I might be allowed a plug of ORIC. ORIC has a collection of books on utility regulation, audiovisuals, annual reports for utility companies, and newsletters, consultations, a real treasure trove of utilities information, and we would like to encourage persons to come and visit us and do the research there. So overall, our activities cover public education program, or outreach, or appeals and complaints handling procedures, and this overall has us. So specifically, what do? We are the main point of contact for the consumer. We face the consumer who have complaints or appeals. OUR 36 Trafalgar Road on the 3rd floor of the PCJ building. They contact us via social media, mostly Facebook or Twitter, or by email. We also use mass media channels. We have 2 radio programs, two very popular radio programs, of course. One is aired on Hotline, RGR on Wednesdays, and the other is the Inside the OUR. Another one of our roles is to organize public consultations for rate determination. And in fact, we've just completed a 9-parish run for the National Water Commission's rate determination. We at the Consumer and Public Affairs Department manage the OUR's public image. And what does this mean? It means that, among other things, we make sure that inquiries that we get from you, members of the public, are responded to in a timely manner, and that our answers are accurate, and that we keep Jamaican Utilities consumer updated on all issues that they will have. Finally, we do a systematic measurement and evaluation of the services utility companies offer to consumers. And we do this every year through a national consumer satisfaction survey. The last such survey was completed in 2016, and we're actually now in the process of preparing for a new survey next year. So what does this survey entail? It involves interviewing about 1,000 Jamaicans, 18 years and up, who live across all 13 parishes in Jamaica, and selected. I'm just going to walk through some of the findings that we have. So on the first slide, you will see where JPS continues to be the most dominant utility provider. 89% of households report that they do business with them. But what is interesting about the findings of this research is that over the last year that we did it, which was in 2014 compared to 2015, there's been a fall off in penetration for all the utility providers except for Flow. This second slide shows the satisfaction level with utility companies. We all know that from time to time, consumers do have complaints and serious issues, but when we completed our survey, the findings showed that there was actually fair levels of satisfaction about the utility providers. What is significant about this finding is that over 2014 to 2016, JPS has shown an improvement in how it delivers its services. So it has actually improved from 4.4 out of 10 to 6.3. And that's significant in terms of how it delivers its service to its customers. Well, let me just go back a little and just tell you why we think that this increase in customer satisfaction for JPS has taken place. The findings showed that customers were actually delighted in the attempts that JPS made over those 2 intervening years to connect with them. They were very heartened by the hints they get, the tips they got from JPS about energy conservation and JPS's promotion through its e-store and solar energy. Those seem to have made a significant impact on customer satisfaction with JPS. So this next slide shows us the extent of customers' awareness of our core function. It is not very heartening because not many persons know about what the OUR does. In fact, 31% report that they know nothing about the OUR. Although we have hovering on 40% who say that they do know something about what we do. So we come to the area of appeals process and incidents of contacting the OUR, which is the meat of the matter for our webinar. How many persons are aware of the appeals process? Well, our findings have shown us that hovering on 40% say they're not aware at all, unfortunately, and 44% of customers say they are moderately aware. Interestingly, the other chart shows that at least 80% of persons have never contacted the OUR, but we do have 21% of persons who have come through our doors, either by physically or through email or other social media channels. This other slide further elaborates on that. The awareness has in fact remained unchanged, hovering around 50%, 47 to 50% of awareness. So half of the persons really don't know about the OUR or our appeals process. So we're indeed very happy to be interfacing with you in this webinar so that we can share what we do in the OUR to help customers when they bring us their appeals and complaints. Finally, just to give you a historical perspective, a 3-year historical perspective on the customer contacts that we've had over the last 3 years, we actually have seen an increase moving from almost 3,000 in 2015 to almost 4,000 in 2017-18. So with that said, we will jump into trying to fill the gaps, the information gaps that exist about our appeals process and complaints handling.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. So as Yvonne says, from customer awareness, we go to OUR's complaints handling and appeals process. And for that, we turn to Naomi Watkins, who is the coordinator for the Consumer Affairs Unit at the OUR. Naomi.
Okay, thank you, Liz. And I welcome the opportunity to share with our viewers what we do in the Consumer Affairs Unit. So as Yvonne spoke about the limited or low awareness of our appeals process, and also the number of persons who are aware of what we do, we actually get sometimes as high as 350 contacts from customers in a month. However, in most of those instances, the persons have not been to the utility providers before coming to us. What we encourage is for the consumers first to go to their utility providers because they have established complaints handling procedures in place. And when they have gotten a final decision from the utility providers, if they are still dissatisfied, then they can come to us and ask us to intervene, hence our appeals process. So for the appeals process, they will need to have a written response from the utility provider, and that's what they are appealing against, that particular decision. You can submit appeals via email. Our email address, consumer@our.org.jm. You can send it via letters. You can also fax it to us, and persons actually walk in with their correspondence sometimes to drop it off. Okay, so for the appeals process, we endeavor to complete it within 65 working days. And this chart has a breakdown of the different activities that we do. So we acknowledge your correspondence and assign it to one of our consumer affairs officers within 2 days. Next stage is that we prepare a case letter that we will send to the utility provider asking for specific information or giving instructions in regards to your appeal. Our utility providers actually have 30 working days within which to submit their response to us. When we get that response, we will review it within 10 working days. There are instances where we have to go back to the providers for follow-up information. And we have a 5 days And the days are working days here. So weekends and public holidays are not included. Then after we get back, then we have the providers have 5 working days to provide the response to the follow-up correspondence. Then we will prepare a final letter, which is how we outline our decision to your appeal. And we will dispatch that letter to you within 1 day. Okay, just going back here. As I said, we have 65, our standard is 65 working days. There are instances, though, where we have appeals that we classify as special appeals based on the circumstances of the case. A lot of them are equipment or property damage matters, or in some other instances, some complex cases. Like recently, we had an appeal from a utility, a water consumer, but they had almost 30 accounts for that particular appeal. So clearly that would fall within one of the cases of special appeals. Okay, so when we arrive at our decision, we'll classify it based on whether it is resolved in favor of the utility, whether it's resolved in favor of the consumer. There are other instances of compromise. But here we have a case where the decision went in favor of the utility provider. In this particular instance, this was a JPS customer who had an adjustment done to their account, which the customer thought was unfair and inaccurate. So what had happened in this instance is initially JPS, in August of the year, JPS recorded a very low reading. It was 39 for the customer. It didn't do anything. The following month, which is September, they got a reading of 0. And then they checked the meter in October and found that it was working intermittently. So eventually they removed the meter in November of that year and installed a new meter. Over a 36 days period, they took the reading and used that reading to establish the average daily consumption. So they had recorded 380 kilowatt hours over that 36 days, which would give them an average daily consumption of 8.556 kilowatt hour. And that was used to adjust the customer's account, back bill them for 6 months. So there's an approved JPS back billing policy in place that provides for customers to be back billed. And so here is the clause that was used. In cases where the accuracy of a meter falls outside the maximum deviation tolerance of plus or minus 2% due to normal degradation and or natural causes resulting in an account being inaccurately billed, the account shall be back billed to allow for the payment of the differential of the actual charges for which the account should have been billed or adjusted for a period not exceeding 6 months or from the contract date for the customer, whichever is less. So essentially, the JPS is allowed to recover for electricity that was consumed. However, we have established a time limit within which they can adjust the account. And in this particular case, we found that JPS had actually adhered to that policy. So the decision was in their favor, and the decision was deemed accurate. However, one of the things that we notice is that we actually have guaranteed service standards, which one of them speaks to the time frame within which JPS is to do the adjustment. In this particular instance, JPS had not acted within time. So even though it was resolved in favor of the utility provider had breached the guaranteed service standards, and the customer actually got a credit of $8,250 for that particular breach. There is another case that we had where it was decided in favor of the utility customer. In this particular instance, a National Water Commission customer, NWC discovered that they had made an error, mixed up 2 meter numbers. So this customer was actually underbilled for the amount of water that was consumed for that particular account. And when NWC discovered that, they tried, well, they actually adjusted the account for that error. And it happened for more than 6 years ago. So the customer contacted us stating that they thought it was unfair and they should be held accountable for NWC's error. So we wrote to NWC about the matter, asking them the reason why they were adjusting after that 6 years. And 6 years actually is important because within our judicial system, you need to bring a civil matter to the courts before 6 years has expired. So after we wrote to the NWC, they decided to reverse the charges. So that $64,427.69 that was billed to the customer was actually removed from the customer's account. So those are instances where we have dealt with appeals from the customers. Before I go on to call it, just to remind persons that to submit an appeal, they first need to go to the utility provider in writing, get a written response, and what they are appealing to us is the response that was provided to them by the utility provider. So if you're appealing against A and B, you got a response to A and B. When you write to us, you cannot be appealing C. But we welcome you to use the process, and we're here to help.
Okay, thanks, Naomi. And just a reminder, if you're just joining us, we're having a discussion on the appeals process by the OUR, how we have a department that assists you with your customer queries and concerns and complaints that you have. We're going to be talking a bit more, Naomi, a little later about the 65 days, because you brought some good examples that will explain why it takes so long, but we'll be talking a bit more about it in our discussion segment. But what is our performance and resolution rate? Colette Good is the specialist for consumer affairs. Colette.
Thank you, Liz, and thank our viewers for joining us in this very informative session today. So, as you asked just now, Liz, what is the Consumer Affairs Unit's performance when we talk about the appeals process? Because we would have, as Mrs. Nicholson outlined, made customers aware that they can use this process, and we have established timelines, as was outlined by Naomi, that we, the Consumer Affairs Unit, as well as the service providers, need to adhere to so that we can achieve our objective in reviewing customers' appeals within the established 65 working days. So, as was explained by Naomi, appeals can have various outcomes. An outcome of an appeal can be by way of a compromise, or it can be resolved in favor of the customer or in favor of the utility. Now, on the slide, you will notice that the percentage of appeals that have been resolved in favor of the utility was 71%. And you may think, that 71% seems high. So would it make sense then for me to appeal a utility decision to the OUR? Because more than likely, the result is going to be that it is going to be resolved in favor of the utility. However, what must be noted is that where appeals are resolved in favor of the utility, it is an indication that the service providers are delivering service in keeping with their terms and conditions of service, as well as any regulatory decisions or policies that the OUR may issue. But before we can know what the outcome of an appeal will be, the OUR has to carry out the activities that Naomi outlined for the appeals process. Now, in an effort to ensure that we are able to meet our obligation to the customer, which is to complete that assessment, that investigation, within the 65 working days for general appeals, because Naomi did also indicate that we do classify some appeals as being special, we monitor and collect data on our performance against the appeals process timelines, as well as the performance of the service providers. So this table shows the performance of the Consumer Affairs Unit, and this is for the period April to June of this year. And you can see that generally the Consumer Affairs Unit has performed well. We have in 100% of instances copied our correspondence to the service, to the customer, but particularly we have in 100% of instances provided our final response to the customer within the established 65 working days. Now, one of the aims of collecting the information on our performance against the appeals process timeline is so that we can see whether or not we are meeting the timelines, whether we are exceeding it, or whether we are failing to achieve the timelines. From this exercise, we also compute what we call our resolution rate. And that resolution rate refers to the number of appeals that we complete within the 65 working days. Now, that rate can vary from one period to the next, because in the previous period ending March 2018, we achieved a resolution rate of 91%, which is a little lower than the 100% that was achieved at the end of the June period. So what are some of the factors that would cause us not to be able to achieve meeting our 65-day timeline? One of those factors has to do with the cooperation of the service providers, in that they need to provide the information that we have requested within the specified timeline so that we can then do our review and advise the customer of our findings. Where we have recognized that the service providers have been delinquent, we established what we call our service level agreement, which represents the commitment of both parties to meet the agreed timelines. So how have these service providers performed? As we can see on this table, the service providers are required to acknowledge receipt of our case letters, which is that correspondence requesting information from them specific to a customer's appeal within 5 working days. Now, what we can note is that their performance in meeting that, their compliance level in meeting that performance target fluctuates from one period to the next. I mean, DML was compliant. However, JPS and NWC, their compliance rating fluctuated from one period to the next. Similarly, with respect to responding to our information requests, the JPS and NWC, again, their performance level fluctuated from one period to the next. And again, in recognizing that the importance for the service providers to meet the timelines that we have established, we have established the service level agreements, and even though the compliance rate fluctuates here, it represents an improvement over previous periods. So we are continuing to work with the service providers so that we can get them to be consistent in meeting the appeals process timelines. Now, one of the other outcomes of the appeals process is that where we find that the service providers are in breach of their service contract, or they did not comply with a regulatory rule, then they will be required to take corrective action. And that corrective action in some instances can result in utility consumers being compensated by way of a credit to their accounts. For the first half of this year, the Consumer Affairs Unit secured a little over $280,000 for utility customers, and 69% of the amount secured related to JPS appeals. NWC followed, Columbus Communications followed with 16%, NWC 14%, and Cable and Wireless 1%. Now, when the Consumer Affairs Unit has completed its review of an appeal, is that the end of the process? No, it isn't. In that final response to the customer, he or she is advised that she can appeal the decision of the Consumer Affairs Unit to the Director of Consumer Affairs. However, in order for the Director to accept that appeal, the customer needs to submit new information that was not previously submitted with the initial appeal. And that process has also borne some fruit, because in some instances, the decision that was previously arrived at changed, and customers have been compensated at the end of the process relating to appeals to director. Additionally, coming out of contacts, and I say contacts from customers because it would include complaints as well as appeals, the nature of that contact that was brought to our attention may result in a policy decision and or a directive being issued to a service provider. And an example of that is, I think it was in 2016, we received complaints from NWC customers about the erroneous application of the late payment fee, as well as receiving multiple bills in one billing cycle. Following on our investigations, we issued a directive instructing the NWC to cease and desist from sending more than one bills in a single billing period, except in certain circumstances. For instance, if it is a customer is relocating from a premises and has asked the NWC to come and take a reading, then naturally they would receive more than one. They would receive more than one bill for that billing period. Additionally, if it is that the NWC is changing out meters, then again it would warrant them sending more than one bills per billing period. So, as my colleagues did, I do encourage consumers out there of utility services to utilize the OUR's appeals process, because there are benefits to be derived.
Okay, thank you so much, Colette Good. So, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from the panelists. It's now your time, and we invite you to send your questions or comments. We're going to be putting up our contacts, right? It's on your screen right now. We want to hear from you. Please communicate with us if you're on Facebook Live or page on Facebook Live on our page. We invite you to just send a quick text via that method, or our YouTube page. You can send us a quick text as well, or WhatsApp 876-316-2647, or good old SMS text message. We'll get that as well, 316-2647, and of course you have to put the 876 in front of it. I'm going to throw my first question out in the meantime while I wait for yours to Naomi, because I want those who are watching to get a good grasp of what's the difference between a complaints and an appeals. Does it differ? What's the difference?
Okay, there is indeed a difference in that an appeal, the person would have written to the utility provider. The utility provider would have given them a written response in regards to what they had queried or complained about, their problem. So they are not in agreement with that outcome, and they have come to us. A complaint, on the other hand, is that, for instance, somebody said, oh, their bill has jumped from $2,000 per month to $20,000 per month. And they are coming to us. They haven't contacted the utility provider as yet. Or sometimes they may have called the utility provider, and they are told at the front line by the customer service rep to pay the bill, and they just left it at that and think that we at OUR can make a difference at that stage.
So an appeal process normally takes a lot of investigation on our part, hence the 65 days or the 85 days.
Yes, it is.
So you mentioned it before, but I want you to go through it again. What work do we have to do once we get an official complaint, an official appeal? So a customer goes to a utility company. The utility company has made a decision with which the customer is not in agreement. They take all their paperwork and they come to the OUR. You mentioned it a while ago, Colette mentioned it, but I want it clear to customers. What does our process entail in a nutshell once that appeal comes to us?
Okay, so once the appeal comes to us, we go through what you have requested to ensure that we get what your issue is. And then based on that, we will write to the provider asking for information specific to that complaint. So for instance, for billing, we may ask for statement of accounts over a particular period, inspection reports relating to meter inspection of the premises over a period of time. If it's a issue about the meter, query whether the meter is working properly, we will request a meter accuracy test report if one was done. If not, we will ask them to do one. For JPS, we might ask them for issues relating to outages, number of customers affected by that particular outages, whether they have gotten complaints or claims from other customers within that locality.
So it's a very laborious process on our part, and we do involve third parties from time to time. So in addition to the utility company, sometimes we also do our independent investigation, like...
Yes, we have referred outside to independent companies and also internally, because the OUR has a well-qualified team of specialists in different areas, like engineers. So sometimes we need to engage them. Sometimes we need to engage our legal department, because we need to ensure that the response we are providing, that it is legally sound.
Yes.
Because the utility providers can take us to court.
That is true.
And it has happened in the past. So, and if they do, we want to make, that decision will stand, because it was sound.
So even though we have insisted that take your complaints first to the utility providers, I know you mentioned we get sometimes 350 contacts per month. So persons are still contacting us, whether it's via call, via walk-in, via social media pages, via our emails. Persons are still contacting us. What do we do in those instances?
Okay, so what we do, it varies, because we have the various channels of contacting us. Persons come to our offices. then when they come to our offices, we see them. If they send us emails.
I would like to boast that we have like a 5-minute waiting time, if that much.
Yes. Most times we actually see them before 5 minutes.
Yes.
Occasionally we have challenges, but yes, our standard is to see them within 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yes. So in other instances, we'll get written correspondence, and those we will forward as is, and with a little cover note to the utility provider that please action this complaint. Sometimes we will do a little summary of what it is, and ask the utility provider to also provide us with a copy of the response to the customer to update us on their responses.
So we don't turn away customers who come with their complaints?
No, we don't.
That's not our style?
No, that's not our style.
Colette, you talked about the terms and conditions of service. I know sometimes we do get complaints about things that are included in the terms and conditions of service. Talk to us about that.
That is true, Liz, because the terms and the conditions of service actually represents the agreement between the service provider and the customer with respect to the standards that they will meet in delivering the service. So, for instance, one of the complaints that we have been receiving more frequently in recent times relates to being out of telephone service for an extended period. You know, customers want to know what is my recourse, what happens. And in the in the terms and conditions of service for Flow in particular, which customers can find on the company's website as well as in the telephone directory, it indicates that where service is interrupted outside of any act of God, then for 72 consecutive hours, then the customer will be rebated the service charge. So it has to be for at least 72 consecutive hours that the service is interrupted for. There are similar provisions. Well, there are other terms that the JPSCO and the NWC have agreed to meet with their customer. For instance, with the NWC, where they estimate an account consecutively in excess of 3 billing periods, then their business policy advises that they will reconcile the account by either adding up the sum of the estimates, or take the meter reading to see which is less, and they will apply the lesser value to the account. So, for instance, if the sum of the estimates amounted to 10,000 liters, but the meter reading indicated that you only consumed 8,000 liters, then they will apply the 8,000 liters to the account. So those are some examples of the...
So all the utilities have terms and conditions of service?
Yes, they do.
So when persons are connecting for new supply or whatever it is, whether it's through the telcos, water or electricity, they should get copies of the terms of service, or are they expected to go online to the various websites and access?
Well, they can certainly ask to see the terms and conditions of service, and the service provider can guide them as to where they can find it easily.
Because this is the contract that binds me, the customer, to you, the company.
It is.
What I'm going to hold you accountable to.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
The OUR had formed some service level agreements with a few of the utility companies. What does that entail? Why did we go that route, really?
All right. So these service level agreements that we have established are specific to the JPS and the NWC. Why? Because those are the service providers from whom we get most of the appeals and most of the contacts in general, but the appeals in particular. And over the years, we recognized that although we have established and outlined the appeals process activities, with the various timelines that they are to meet, as well as for the OUR to meet, in some cases, and back then in most instances, they would have been missing the timelines. And so we decided and we agreed through discussion that we would make this agreement, a formal agreement, put it in writing, outlining the appeals process, the specific action that each party is to take within what timeline. Additionally, it outlines what will happen in the event the service provider fails to adhere to the agreement. Because what we have said is where, for instance, the service provider continues to be delinquent in submitting the information that we requested at the managerial level, we will escalate that particular situation right up to the level of the president of the company.
entity.
And also they are aware that we also publish the performance of their performance in our quarterly performance reports. And we have found that that also works, because they don't like to see the
Yes.
they really do not like to see
Yes.
the low compliance ratings.
Yes.
So that has worked as well. But the service level agreements really represent the agreement between the OUR and JPS and NWC to adhere to the timelines for the appeals process.
And since we established those SLAs, you're saying that it has resulted in very positive outcomes.
It has. Because prior to the establishment of the agreements, for providing responses, in some instances, the percentage within the 30 working days would have been 0.
You mentioned escalation a while ago, and I'm going to throw this to Yvonne because it would land on her desk. Persons, Yvonne, may not necessarily be in agreement with the decision we make on their appeals. What is their recourse?
Okay.
So Naomi and her team makes a decision,
Right.
and they say, no, still not. What do they do?
Well, they do have the avenue of appealing to the director,
Which is you.
which is me.
Yes.
And we do welcome, that next step and that next level in order to help them to resolve their issue. So what they do is we do have a form that we ask consumers appealing to the director to fill out. Most importantly, Liz, we ask them to include additional information that will assist their case. Unfortunately, as Colette will tell you, because she reviews quite a few of them, I would say about 90% of them do not give us additional information. So we are encouraging persons who are not satisfied and have escalated their appeal to provide us with additional information.
Okay. Yvonne, still with you. We've heard the criticism before, we are not perfect, that it don't make sense to take it to the OUR because they're going to side with the utility anyway, they're not going to do anything in our favor. I'm sure you've heard it, Yvonne.
Yes, we have, but this is absolutely not so. We do try our best when we do get appeals and complaints, and I just want to do a little segue here and encourage customers to go first to the utility provider before coming to the OUR. It is important for them to allow the utility provider to try and resolve their issue before coming to us. So when you do come to us, we give it our 200% to resolve the issue. But what we have found over these years is, Liz, that persons do not know their rights and responsibilities. So they might be insistent that they are in the right, but when we do our own investigations, it's actually the fact that they do not know what their responsibilities are. Some of them perhaps don't know how to read a bill. Sometimes there's a leak that they have not detected.
Yes.
So those are some of the issues that we encourage consumers and utility customers to apprise themselves of their own rights and responsibilities, read the terms and conditions of their agreement between the service provider, and of course, if all else fails, the OUR has a very robust public education program that Liz can speak
Yes,
to.
we do. We have been going around and we've been talking with customers about their rights and responsibilities because, as Yvonne said, she is correct. We do have some instances where customers have complained to us, and when we have outlined why it is that they will not be in the right in this instance, then they think that we are being unreasonable. But one of the good things about the OUR's process is that any decision that we make, we have reasons, we have outlined the reasons for the decision. So it's not a case of, oh, the utility is right and you're wrong and we leave it at that. But we have been going across the island. We just completed our Parish Connection series earlier this year, where we have gone into some rural communities, especially those we are proudest of, and some schools, just engaging them about what are their rights and responsibilities. We have said to them, for example, you can't reasonably expect that a JPS meter man or a NWC meter man is going to scale your fence because you lock up the gate or you have bad dogs out and they're going to come and read your meters. So when you're complaining that your meter has not been read over the last 6 months, why is it that the meter has not been read? Is it that JPS or NWC are being delinquent, or is it that they are not having access to your meters? Simple things like that we try to engage them with. Yes, Colette?
Yes, indeed, Liz. And just to add to that conversation, we also have to remind our customers and utility consumers that the OUR is a creature of statute. And there are acts and rules that we have to follow even when we are reviewing an appeal. So if it is that a customer contacted us regarding a high bill, it doesn't, and the bill would have, the consumption would have been based on actual meter reading, it doesn't mean that because the customer deemed the bill to be high, that the bill is wrong. So we would therefore, in reviewing that matter, we would have to look at the rules that govern, was the meter read, look at meter readings, previous meter readings for that account to ascertain, you know, whether from the sequential nature of the readings, whether the meter would be deemed in fact in good working condition, whether the NWC has, whether the service provider, as Naomi indicated, would have breached any of the guaranteed standards, whether if any adjustment that was carried out on that account was done in keeping with the provisions of the back billing policies and procedures. So we have to, when we are doing our review of appeals, still look at those documents that governs what we do.
Because the investigation of appeals is a very laborious process, hence the 65 days. I think we've had good record of making it shorter than 65 days, but there are instances when we have to go over. Naomi, I want to talk a bit before we wrap up about the customer charter, because we do hold ourselves accountable to customers and we do have certain expectations of you as well as we expect you to have certain expectations of us.
Yes, we do have this customer charter, and there are several things that you expect from us, and we work diligently to do so. One of the things, anybody who has been to the OUR will tell you that we have professional, warm, friendly staff. We often hear persons saying that they can't believe this is a public entity. In addition to that, for persons who visit us, as was stated before, we try to see them. It's our commitment to see them within 5 minutes of arrival. And we provide you as best as possible with accurate and current information. Because we have been speaking about rights and responsibilities. And the responsibilities part is not necessarily what persons want to hear, but it's still a part of the process.
That is very true.
As Colette says, we're a creature of statute, And if that is what is in the legislation, in the governing regulations, we have to abide by them.
Confidentiality is also one of our...
Confidentiality is
key.
also, it's key. We have our IT department that has developed a database, and that's well protected. And also, we won't be going around to say, oh, you know, Liz complained about her bill.
Yes.
Or, you know, something
We
like
are
that.
very big on
Yes,
confidentiality.
yes,
we have to be.
Yes, we have to be.
But we also expect some things from customers.
So, right. So here we go again with responsibilities for your appeals.
Yes.
When you're coming to us, as I stated, we need a written response from the utility provider. We need you to provide us with the account number. We need you to provide us with the correct address and as much detail as possible. And when I said as much detail as possible, it doesn't mean that we need a 6-page of you just going on and on, because that happens sometimes. But the relevant information to your case. And also, as I said, we have professional staff. We also ask you to treat our staff with respect.
Yes.
Especially when you don't get the answer that you would like to get, because we can't just tell you something to make you feel good when we don't have the basis on which to do so.
And to be able to complete it in a timeline that we set ourselves, we also expect them that whenever we ask them for information, that they would also provide it in a timely way.
Yes,
that's very important as well.
Yes, because sometimes we do have to go back to the customers for additional information. Sometimes it's, as I said, it might not be clear what you're asking for, or there's some incomplete period. And we actually have instances like recently after we completed an appeal based on all that we got, all the correspondence, it was the customer was appealing about billing adjustment situation. However, when we communicated, the customer said that was not their issue. They had an issue with estimated bills. So
we have a question that's coming in. What should a customer do when their JPS meter is down and you have reported the matter to the company but nothing is done?
It's a complaint.
It is a complaint because it didn't suggest that they would have already gone to the utility provider, but we still handle it.
No, it suggests that they have, but JPS
oh yes,
has not
they have,
done
right, anything, right.
Right, to correct that situation.
Yes.
So then the customer can contact the OUR and then we will take action.
Follow up with
JPS to ensure that that situation is resolved.
Okay.
Communicated to the customer.
Yes. Remind us about how customers can make contact with us.
They can send email.
What's the email address?
Consumer at...
Without the S, there's no S.
No S.
Yes.
Consumer at our.org.jm. They can come to us via snail mail. That's the post to the post office.
Yeah, regular mail. Let's call it regular mail.
Fax.
Yes. What's our
So
fax? Do you remember our fax number? I don't. It's
929
876
929 3635.
3635. And our social media pages, because increasingly we're getting a lot of social media comments via social media. So we do have a Facebook page. We are on Twitter at the OURJA. We are on LinkedIn, and we are also on Instagram. Just before I came in, I saw that we had a few from via Facebook as well. So Facebook is still our most popular social media contact through which we're getting the contacts. That remains the most popular, but we are getting quite a bit from Twitter, etc. So we want to encourage persons to continue to communicate with the OUR. We do want to hear from you. We do want you to be aware that we do have an appeals process that we have in place just for you, the customer. We do have dedicated consumer affairs officers who are waiting to hear from you about your issues. But we also want you to help us to help you. Provide the relevant information, provide the relevant details about the problem that you're having. Document. We can't overemphasize that. We thoroughly expect that you will already have made contact with the utility company, because it's only fair to them that they get a chance to address your issue. If it is that you're not satisfied, then you come to us. But make sure that you have some written conversation, whether via email or text. I know some of the utility companies have chat rooms. You can get transcripts of those conversations documenting the decision that they have made. Because oftentimes you're saying that they have said one thing, but they're saying, no, we didn't say that to you. Where's the evidence that you are quoting them from? So we want you to make sure that you have those things in writing. That's where we'll leave it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank our panelists, Colette Good, Naomi Watkins, Yvonne Nicholson, for also being a part of the conversation today. Visual Tech Solutions Limited provided technical support. I want to say thank you to the guys who are here today. We're hosted at the Jamaica Conference Center. Thank you also to the Jamaica Conference Center. And the producer of this webinar today was Gordon Brown. Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
The OUR is here to regulate the operation. But you want to light and power your internet and phone. The OUR is here to get you to know your rights.
The OUR is here to regulate on the public utilities operate. Water, light, phone, and internet. The OUR keep them in check.
Contact us at 1-888-CALL-OUR, the Office of Utilities Regulation. OUR, regulating utilities for the benefit of all.